Welcome to the Orykl Podcast, where we ask the big question: Hey, universe, what's going on? I'm your host, Huenu Solsona, and today we are exploring another fascinating spiritual journey. Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome again to the Orykl Podcast, where we ask the universe what is going on. And today we have a wonderful guest, David Bennett, who's going to share his experience of his near-death experience and what that meant for him. So, David, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. This is quite an honor.
Likewise. So, yeah, maybe if you could start off by sharing with us who you were before you had this NDE. Where were you at in your life? What were you doing?
Yes, I was in my mid-20s before I had the experience. And I grew up kind of in I don't know, uh, not the best environment. I was thrown from one family to the next to the next. So I really didn't have a sense of family. And I had a very much a survivalist and self-involved kind of mentality. My actual philosophy was you cut your swath through life. So that doesn't really include other people, it's pretty much I was a lone wolf type of person. It served me well. It served me well. I actually became the chief engineer of a research vessel, and so I thought I was, pretty successful. Even though I really didn't let people inside. I didn't let people into my, you know, I wasn't.
Yeah.
I'd had a lot of bad experiences where I wasn't very trusting. I didn't trust other people, things like that. So
Okay.
yeah,
I think that also resonates with a lot of people, especially in your mid-20s when you're just not really thinking about, the spiritual world, I guess, and you're just kind of working hard and doing your thing. And as you said, if you had that kind of a background, maybe not so supportive, you just, making your way through life in the best way you can. Right. Okay.
yeah, just trying to
So,
get by.
hmm, there you were. There you were. And then what happened?
Well, I was the chief engineer of a research vessel, and we had just evaluated a submarine, and we were off the coast of California, and we were trying to beat a storm that was coming in, but the harbor master wouldn't let our ship in. So the captain, we had a design engineer who had helped design the remote operated vehicle that we were testing, and he needed to get to LAX airport in LA. And so um, we decided to put a small craft in the water, a rubber zodiac. And we used to use this in heavy seas to retrieve our submarines. So we didn't really think too much about it. Um, and we started, but the captain asked me to go along. Normally, I'm the chief engineer. I normally don't go along on these trips because I pretty much stay with the ship. But there weren't that we didn't have a full crew on board, so we didn't have that many people that were familiar with the harbor as I was. So the captain asked me to go along to accompany, and so we had a mate and myself in, navigating the small boat, and then the rest of the crew that were evaluating the submarine, they were all going to go, they wanted to go home. So we started out, and there were about five of us in the Zodiac. And so we started heading in, and yeah, you got to realize the seas were 25 to 30 foot that night. And so we would get up on top of a swell, and we would go down the trough and go up on the top of the next one and try to take a bearing on, the harbor and the harbor buoy. But it wasn't long. We kind of lost track of where we were because the storm had blown us a mile south from the harbor. We didn't even realize it. And because we started out, we were 2 miles out before we even started. So, um, but about a mile from shore, we ran into a breaker zone where the waves were actually cresting, and we drove right off a breaker. And the Zodiac, um, I yelled to the mate to, to turn us about because it's a dangerous place to be. And just then the next one came and it crashed down on us, and it folded the Zodiac in half like a peanut butter sandwich, is what I like to say. I was in the bow, so it catapulted me into the sea. Now I'm trained as a commercial diver, so I wasn't freaked out, but you can only hold your breath so long. And I was just hanging on to the life vest and just trying to protect myself because this was at nighttime. I couldn't see what was up or down, and I was being tumbled and tossed like a rag doll. So I just really, I didn't know which way to go, and I didn't want to swim down. So I just hung on and waited for the life vest to bring me to the surface. Eventually, you can only hold your breath so long, and I drowned. But I found myself in this darkness, this absolute darkness, but it was vast and it was quiet. I'd just come from this very violent place and very loud place. And suddenly I'm in this absolute quiet, absolute darkness. But it was calm. It was peaceful. I was comfortable. And so I was curious. I was very curious. What is this? Where am I? What's going on? And I'm trained as a commercial diver. We were trained in oxygen deprivation. We know about the euphoria and all of that, but this was way beyond anything like that. But I didn't really feel, it felt so vast, and I didn't feel alone at all. It felt like, even though it was absolute blackness, absolute nothing, it felt like everything was present at the same time. It's hard to explain, but it was so vast and so palpable. And then I saw a light, and I was just drawn to this light, and I felt like I was moving toward it. And as I got closer, the light actually became millions upon millions of fragments of light, and they were all kind of moving in unison. And it was absolutely beautiful and very awe-inspiring. It was just to watch these beautiful fragments of light, multicolored and just moving, like they had one mind. So as I got closer, three of the fragments broke away and they came toward me. And as they came toward me, I was feeling these waves of love just embracing me, this feeling of being loved. And they welcomed me home. And I recognized them. I recognized them as, I call them my soul family, because they were not anyone that I'd lived with in this life, but I recognized them as my soul family. And eventually a dozen of them came, and they took me into the light, into this area that was more spherical, like a big bubble. And while we were in this area, we started to relive my life, and not just relive it, like watching a movie. It was more like I would relive the experience, but not only from my perspective, but from everyone I'd ever interacted with, from their perspective. So it was like my consciousness broke into these fragments, or these multiple streams of consciousness, all at the same time. And I was experiencing it the way other people were experiencing me. And so it was incredibly humbling, because like I said, I was a brash young man. I had that, a pretty brash philosophy. And some of the things that I had to relive, I wasn't too proud of in this environment, in this loving environment. I was like, oh my gosh, because my soul family, they were experiencing it the same way I was. So they were there just supporting me, loving me. And I was concerned that they had to see this, but they just loved me. They supported me. They didn't judge me at all. In fact, they were very excited to be able to experience this life, and for me to, see my actions and interactions, that sort of thing. And we actually went through my life, and it was, there were some interesting parts. Some of the things that I thought were more important in life really had hardly any significance, especially when they were very ego driven. You know, like I was incredibly proud of being the chief engineer of this research vessel. It meant very little in the life review. But
Right.
what had more significance was when I would do something with loving intent. You know, that would create like the biggest ripples, because everything that we do has actions and reactions and that sort of thing. And so uh I got to see all of this, you know, and I was just amazed at how much we affect each other, how interconnected we are with each other, that sort of thing. But eventually, we got to a point where I started seeing things that weren't from my life. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was my potential future that I was looking at. And everything in the life review was incredibly crystal clear. But when it came to the preview of potential life, it was like I was looking down a corridor. And in the central part was very, very clear, but off to the periphery was kind of like out of focus. But I got the impression that if I wanted to, I could go over this way, but I would kind of be guided back to my central path, and or I could go that way and I'd be guided back to my central path. So we went down this corridor for quite a ways. I saw a number of events that could potentially be my life.
Wow.
And then the light itself spoke to me and said, "This is not your time. You must return." And I said, "No way. No, that body is broken. I know it is, and it's cold, and I want nothing to do with it. Life is hard. And I found a family here that I didn't know existed. I'm loved like I've never been loved in my life." And and so I argued with what I perceived as God.
Mm.
And the light again spoke. And, these millions upon millions of fragments in unison all spoke. And it said, um, "You must return. You have a purpose." And that word purpose just kind of just resonated into my being. And I, when we're on the other side, we have a much greater expanded consciousness. I like to say it's like all the souls that ever were and all the souls that ever will be.
Mm.
And you have this incredible expansive knowing. So when I heard that word purpose, and when it kind of just, you know, resonated with my being, I understood it. And with that understanding, I came to acceptance. I accepted that I have this purpose. The moment I came to acceptance, I found myself outside my body. My body's still in the ocean, being tumbled and tossed in this violence. The three original soul beings that greeted me, welcomed me home, were with me. And we were watching my body. And I was amazed because I was like, how is the enormity of me, this expansive being, gonna fit in there,
Yeah.
in that body?
Okay.
I was just kind of in awe of all of this.
Yeah.
And then the bow line from the zodiac actually wrapped itself around my arm, and a wave hit the wreckage and it popped up. And when it popped up, it pulled my arm up. Whoops, sorry. It pulled my arm up and actually dislocated my shoulder and my thumb. But I didn't feel anything because I was not in my body. I was just observing this. And
Yeah.
it pulled my body back up to the surface. And when it did, my body got tangled in the lines and the wreckage, and the waves were pounding me up against it. And when it did, it pushed some of that salt water out of my lungs. And my soul family gave me a gentle push, and I just resonated back into my body.
Wow.
On the surface, when we come back, we feel like we're half here and half there. Okay, we're in our physical body, but we still have this connection.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, purpose. You know, and it was like it was so crystal clear when I was on the other side. Now I'm back in my body, and it's like sand in my hands. It's just disappearing. It's just you know, it's like I'm trying to grasp it as it's disappearing, you know, the purpose. And I'm having a difficult time staying on the surface. And I didn't but because of that incredible awareness that you have, I knew there was something wrong with my life vest. And I opened it up, and the actual uh, canvas had dry rotted, and the fiber filling was saturated with salt water, and it was actually pulling me down instead of bringing me up. So I released that, and then I was able to hang on to the you know, the floating wreckage. And my friends, my mates that were in the boat with me, found me, and we all swam a mile into the shore. So you can say it was a rough
Wow.
night.
Wow. Wow. You couldn't get back onto the zodiac.
Oh, it was destroyed. Yeah, when it folded in half, the fiberglass bottom splintered and just ruptured everything. So
Yeah.
there was a little bit of air in one of the pontoons. One of the pontoons stayed inflated, so it served as a rally point for us to be able to swim together, because I had a dislocated shoulder and arm. I really
Yeah.
couldn't swim that great. So I just held on with one hand and kind of scissor kicked, and my friends, we all just swam together, and
Yeah. And landed
and we
on
had to swim through this, you know, raging sea, you know, to get
yeah.
it wasn't an easy swim.
Yeah, that is incredible. I have some questions, and I'm sure you want to say a little bit more, but I find it interesting because I've interviewed quite a few people that have had NDEs, and there's a lot of similarities, but then there's some things that are quite unique to each experience. And I find it quite interesting when you were in that passage that you could, you know, you had the preview and you could go left and right. Do you think that that is I'm just trying to think that sometimes, you know, when we come into this life, we have certain things that we decide that should be in our lives, you know, some things that I believe anyway, we kind of are already organized in our life, but then how we react to those things is up to us. So did it feel like this was your life and what you had chosen to do, and this is, you know, it's you, David Bennett, but within that life you had some options? So it's like that
Yeah,
mixture of
I've
free
had a lot
will,
of
but
time.
also some stuff which is in your destiny, really.
Exactly. You're exactly right. The way that I perceive it, what I believe, after I've had a lot of time to look
Right.
at that,
Yeah.
and the core path, I believe, was what I had chosen for this life. But the periphery, the right or left, that was my free will. I could go this way, but I would be guided back, or I could go that way and I'd be guided back. And many of those events have come to pass. So I've been able to, and that's what made this very veridical for me, is that the things that I saw have come to pass. You know, my future life actually happened. So uh, and it was when it was happening, I had that instant recall of from that
Right.
life review, that
Mm.
hyper reality understanding as it was happening,
Yeah.
which was it was quite phenomenal, you know, to be going through that and in while you're alive, having
Yeah.
that life preview while you're doing it. It was like, I like to say, it was like deja vu on steroids. It was quite intense. So
Yeah, yeah. I haven't heard that before. It's fascinating. Okay, so then what happened? No, you landed, you're obviously injured. I can imagine you go to hospital, and when did you start speaking about
actually,
this? When did you, you know, or you didn't go to
actually,
hospital, you just drive home.
we didn't go to hospital. We
Uh,
did some first aid right there on the beach. You know, one of the guys, you know, popped my shoulder back in and my hand, and and we were all in shock. We were all hypothermic. The water was incredibly cold. We were all, we weren't really thinking properly. And we got to the beach, and we drove everybody home pretty much. But we stopped at another mate's, and this is back in '83, so we didn't have the type of communication on board ships they have today. So we had to use a ship to shore operator, and so we just called and said, "Oh, we won't be coming back," and we did, and so because you didn't want to put too much information out there, these guys were hoping to get their gear back because they'd lost everything because they had their sea bags with them. They were coming in for the night.
Okay.
So they were hoping to go and beachcomb in the morning and maybe find some of their gear, but anyway, we didn't want to broadcast that we'd had an accident.
Yeah.
And so it was just, but for me, it was a totally different story because when I got back, suddenly, now I'm an engineer and I saw things pretty much as black and white. You know, what I learned in school, what I experienced in life, that was my reality.
Mm.
Suddenly I'd had this experience, and now suddenly I could see auras. I didn't know what they were. I
Oh,
called them life force energy because they just seemed to surround everything that was, and it was even rocks had auras. It was crazy. I would see these auras and it freaked me out because I didn't know what was going on. I thought, man, something, I must have hit my head or something, something's wrong. And then I started getting information. It was like I would get these knowings, these understandings, and it wasn't anything that I'd, you know, learned in school, wasn't
yeah.
anything I experienced in life, but suddenly I would know things. And I didn't trust it at first. I was like, where did this come from? What is this? This sudden understanding and knowings. And sometimes it would come as just an understanding, a knowing. Sometimes it would come like a vision, and you'd have to interpret. And so it's like, what the heck is this? So as an engineer, I did what an engineer would do is I tested it to see how real is it? How veridical or is it something that I can trust and rely on?
Yeah.
And over a short period of time, it was. But to tell you the truth, the whole event really freaked me out, and because nobody talks to God, and especially not me,
Yeah.
and I didn't really have a spiritual path before the experience, and so suddenly I felt like I was living in two worlds. I had this my human self, and I had this spiritual self that suddenly I was aware of. And 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 I didn't know what to do with it. I was kind of lost. I was like,
Yeah.
oarless. I was adrift. I didn't know what to do, and I tried to share with my first wife at the time and got a very bad reaction. And so I told her,
You
I
were
shared the
married at the
experience, and
time because this
yeah, I
went
was married
for
at the
how,
time.
okay. Because this went over
And
how long that you were feeling this way and seeing these things.
yeah, well, I told her right away, and she didn't react well to it. So I thought, well, I can't share this. And the work that we did on the ship, all my mates, it was very dangerous. Underwater exploration was very dangerous back in the 80s. And so talking about death and dying was kind of a taboo subject because we put each other's lives in each other's hands every day. So you don't you don't talk about death, okay? It was just taboo. So I didn't feel like I could share it with anybody. So I kept it to myself for 11 years until I had a second experience. So I had a second near-death experience and then I started meeting other near-death experiencers, and that helped incredibly because suddenly I had someone who could just immediately accept it. There wasn't any doubt about it. They would accept it and as it was, and then you could share it with someone. You could talk about it, and you could, integrate it.
Mm.
Um, right away, though, the things that I could deal with right away was You know, when you have a life review like that, you really have such an in-depth look at yourself from a spiritual point of view that you could accept, okay, this is who I am. So I came to acceptance. This is who I am. I need to work on myself because that brash young man, you know, I need to mellow those edges a little bit because, you know, I could see where I had hurt people and things like that, you know. And so, and then tolerance. Before this experience, I wasn't really, you know, I would kind of plot my course and I would go for it, you know, and and if you got in my way, I'd go right over you, around you, somehow you get past you, you know, if you got in my way. So I wasn't very tolerant of other people. And so, but in this experience, I got to see that a lot of times, you know, people cross our paths. And when they do, you know, a lot of times they'll make choices that we may not agree with, but they're their choices. It's their life, their choices. And so I learned to be tolerant. I learned because of what I saw and the love and the acceptance that was given to me that I could be tolerant of other people and the lives that they choose and the paths that they choose in their life. So acceptance of myself, tolerance of others, and also tolerance of where we find ourselves in life. That, you know, where we are right now doesn't mean this is where we have to stay. We can work toward something different, you know. And so acceptance and tolerance. And then I learned that we also have a personal truth, a truth that resonates within our heart. I saw this in the life review where we would, it wasn't necessarily like a fact-driven type of truth, you know, or anything like that. But many times in life, we'll come across or we'll be doing something and suddenly our heart will just expand or we'll feel this expansiveness like what we feel, you know, on the other side. And that is a personal truth. That's something that resonates within our being. That's something to pay attention to. And it's also many times a clue as to, you know, maybe a direction that we need to change or we need to go in or something like that. So when we get these personal truths or when we cross one of these personal truths, it's time to pay attention. You know, that's something that's important to us, our life, our path, you know, that sort of thing. So acceptance, tolerance, and truth, that kind of became my mantra for 11 years until I had the second experience. It was after the second experience I started actually communicating with my soul family. The information that I was receiving suddenly became more verbal, and that was so much like the channeling that you do with this program. I was receiving the information from my soul family. So it was like I had 12 different voices that would talk to me, and each one had a different flavor, had a different, you know, vibration and different, they were helpful in different ways, that sort of thing. So my soul family is here for me, and
Right.
they communicate with me. They help me. They guide me all the time. We talk every day. And it's just a part of the way I live now.
Yeah.
So,
Would you call them your spirit guides? And you said there were 12 of them?
yeah, I have 12. I know some other people, some people call them their counsel. Some people
Yeah.
call them their spirit guides, angels. Because I do a lot of energetic healing as well. And when I do energetic healing, many times, the person that I'm working with, their angels, their guides, their deceased loved ones will come and assist in the actual energetic work. And so I've come to just I just call them my soul family.
Yeah.
But yeah, many people I'm
Sure.
not really hung up on labels
Yeah.
or names, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Good.
but but
Human
they're
being.
there to help us. So you could
Yeah.
say they're guides, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fascinating. I mean, I love the story. I love it. It's just so wonderful because of also the background that you came from, and it's just so completely different. Um, what's the biggest learning that you got out of all of this?
Well, I've come to understand that, you know, all of us have the ability to connect to our divine nature, to our higher self.
Mm.
And we don't have to really go looking for it out there because we just have to go within, and it's patiently waiting for us. It's patiently waiting to be there and to help us and to guide us.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, thank you. This is such a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing it with us. I'm sure that it's got a lot of people, curious and also excited. I think it's just really uh, a beautiful thing to know that we're not alone, that this existence isn't all that there is, that there is so much more, and that it really is just an experience for a very short amount of time, that we have free will, and that on the other side there's a lot of love and peace and family and that sense of home that everybody talks about when we do pass. And I think for those people that are also scared of death, which is so many of us, it's really nice and comforting to hear these words, and I've heard it so many times now from so many people. So hopefully those listening do get that. We can never be for sure, people until it happens to us, but the more you hear these stories, the more you believe, and that's a good thing for all of us, I think. So thank you for sharing your story, and yeah, thank you for doing the work that you do. I know that you help other people with your healing as well. So
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for having me. It's and you're right. It I long to return, but I would never do anything to shorten this life because I understand how precious it is.
I like that. I like that. Me too. I'm not scared of death, but I also want to enjoy what I have ahead of me. So thank you, David, and it was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.